You will find that when you simplify your homemaking, it will speak volumes and it will actually seem almost like you have it all together, even if you're just focused on one thing. So the stove is a perfect analogy for how we can divide our attention. If you try to be good at everything, you will never be great at anything. I heard this saying so much when I was growing up, and it usually referred to sports. Didn't super apply to me because I wasn't very coordinated, so the only sport that I was good at was running, and I wasn't very fast, so I ended up running cross country. But my brother, on the other hand, he was very coordinated, very athletic. He had lots of different sports he was into. He played baseball, football, basketball. He ran track and did all the field events. And then when he went to college, he was in boxing. And so my dad was always telling us, you need to choose something that you really want to focus on and build your expertise in that one area. You shouldn't just be trying every little thing for fun, because when you do that, you're never going to be able to really build a skill set in a certain area. And the same exact thing applies to homemaking. We hear all the time about how homemakers and stay-at-home moms, they have so many different plates that they're juggling, and they wear all these different hats, and that's cool, but in reality, you can only focus on one thing at a time. And I hear you. You're like, no, I'm the queen of multitasking. But okay, I want you to think about this for a second. Your body can only be doing one thing at a time. You can physically only be doing one thing at a time. I cannot be physically cooking dinner and physically folding laundry at the same time. Now, I can try to stir something here, run over here and fold a towel, stir something, right? But my body can only be doing one thing at a time. In the same way, your mind can really only be doing one thing at a time. So sometimes there are tasks that are so routine to us and they're so much of a habit that we can do those tasks and our mind can be occupied somewhere else. So we could be listening to a podcast, for example. We could be talking or playing with our children. We could be having a conversation with our husband or a friend on the phone, and you can still manage to wash dishes while you're doing those things. The other way that multitasking can work is if you're willing to compromise on the quality of one task in order to do two things at once. So for example, I do this every week when I do my laundry. I put all the laundry on the couch or on the floor in my son's room, and I will fold, and while I'm folding, I will play with him. If he comes to me, brings me a toy, I don't mind that the laundry is maybe going to take half an hour longer than it was going to, because I'm going to be playing with my son throughout that process. Or maybe I'm on the phone with a friend while I'm grocery shopping, and I do have to get the specific grocery items on my list, but my friend is super understanding, so she's going to understand if the quality of that conversation is not perfect. If I tell her, hey, I'm at the grocery store, sorry, I'm distracted, let me check my list, let me think for a minute, then that's fine. But I just want you to be aware that whenever you're trying to do two things at once, your focus is divided and you're not going to be able to get into a flow state. So the stove is a perfect analogy for how we can divide our attention. Almost always, we only have one burner that we are completely focused on. In this situation, I'm making salmon, and I have the salmon on that one burner, and I have to flip it, I have to kind of nudge it around, make sure it doesn't get stuck to the bottom, maybe pour the sauce over it, things like that, maybe adjust the temperature. Oh, it's too hot, it keeps trying to stick, I'm going to turn the heat up, I'm going to turn the heat down, that sort of thing. On the back burner, I have the rice. I don't even have to do anything with that. I had to prepare it ahead of time. And then once it's boiling, because I made minute rice, okay, once it's boiling, I just had to turn the burner off and leave it there and let it steam for the next however long while I was finishing up dinner. I have some beans, they're edamame, I don't know if I'm saying that right. And those beans, they just have to boil for maybe 3 minutes. So I put it in water, I put it on the stove, I turn it on. I have to monitor. Every once in a while I might give it a stir just to make sure everything is heated evenly throughout, right? But I don't really have to do anything with those things. The only thing I'm really focused on is the salmon right now. And you'll even notice in the back burner, I have the teapot. That's not even on. That's for later. Now, it is full of water. And after we finish eating our food, I'm going to make a cup of tea for me and my husband. That's kind of our little ritual. Every night we drink a cup of tea together. If we don't drink it right after dinner, we drink it after our son goes to bed. So that's fine. That's there for later, but that burner isn't even on. And our attention really does work this way. You can heavily focus on one task. You can passively monitor maybe 2, maximum 3 things. And there are some things that you're going to set aside for later, and that's okay. So just like the 4 burners on a stove, homemaking can be roughly broken up into about 4 categories: cooking, cleaning, budgeting, and self-care. So like I said before, you can passively monitor 2 or 3 things. There might even be a thing that you need to set aside for later. You're not focused on it at all right now. But there's only one thing that you can choose to be heavily, heavily focused on at a time. And that doesn't mean the other things don't happen. See, with the beans, I had to pour them into the pot. I had to pour the water over it. I had to put it on the burner, turn the burner on. Same thing with the rice. Give them a stir every now and then, but then I leave it alone. I had to put the system in place so that those food items could cook, and I'm overseeing them. But I don't have to have my hand in it directly all the time. It's the same way with our home. So you can have systems in place that help you with 2 or 3 out of those 4 categories. And one of those categories might even be set to the side completely. And then there can be one category that you focus on entirely. Now, if you're the mother of a newborn, I'm gonna ask you to focus exclusively on self-care. And I know you're sitting there going, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you talking about? The house is a wreck. You're probably tired of hearing that sleep when the baby sleeps thing, especially if you're like me and maybe you don't have a dishwasher or your laundry machine is not inside your home, so you have to go out to do laundry. And you're thinking, what are you talking about, sleep when the baby sleeps? I have so much work to do here. I'm overwhelmed, I'm overrun. There's no possible way I can do it, right? It's okay if you can't afford the time to take long, luxurious bubble baths. It's okay if you can't go out and get a manicure or a pedicure. It's okay if you don't have the emotional or physical bandwidth to get dressed up and go for a girls' night out with your friends. That's not what I'm referring to when I'm talking about self-care. But what you do need to do is make sure that you are getting enough sleep, that you are drinking enough water, that you are eating healthy and nutritious foods, and that you are taking care of yourself spiritually, that you're staying connected to God. There are so many reasons why this is important, and I'm going to start with the very physical and then work my way back to the spiritual. Physically, your baby needs you. Your baby needs your physical presence. Your baby needs nourishment. If you are breastfeeding, hydration and healthy food consumption is going to affect your breastfeeding journey. Your baby deserves to have a peaceful and a happy mama, and that's only going to happen if you are well rested and you've had your sleep. From the aspect of mental and emotional health, we are very, very vulnerable when we are in a postpartum state. Our hormones are everywhere, our sleep schedule has been disrupted, and we have a whole new human being that we are physically caring for now. On top of this, you can be spiritually vulnerable. And I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but I mean, think about it. When you are super hungry, we even have like this trend, right, about being hangry. When you are super hungry, you can get grumpy, you can get spiteful, you can get short and unkind with the people around you. That is being spiritually affected by the physical. That is because when our body is weak, we can be spiritually vulnerable. And with postpartum, you're in an especially vulnerable state because not only did your body just go through an amazing but difficult process of birth, whether it was natural or through a cesarean section, either way, your body went through tremendous effort to bring this baby into the world. On top of that, your hormones have shifted completely. And now add in, if you're not eating, staying hydrated, and sleeping enough, it's going to really affect you. I am so grateful that before my son was born, I had read a book that explained the importance of sleep and some really practical strategies on how to get enough sleep. And I have to say that while the newborn phase was not easy, I felt well rested. I did make sure I got enough sleep, and I did get enough sleep, and I made that my top priority because I knew that if I wasn't getting enough sleep, I would be worthless in every other category of homemaking. In upcoming videos, I am going to be sharing with you some strategies for getting a good night's sleep, for making sure you drink enough water, for helping to plan nutritious meals, especially during the postpartum period. But in the meantime, I just want you to be aware that that's something that really does need to be top priority for you. Now, maybe you don't have a newborn, or you do, and the self-care aspect is going great, and you're just wondering what should be the next top priority to you. In my previous video on this playlist, we discussed Titus chapter 2 and how one of the things in that context of being homemakers is that we are to love our husbands and to be obedient unto our own husbands. And so I do think that our husbands' opinion, their desires, their needs, their emotional and physical needs should be priority to us as wives. And I think that this is not just a self-sacrificial thing, but it actually is good for you too, because it will help improve your marriage. And especially when you have a new baby, or at any stage of life really, being on the same page with your spouse and having a unified heart and mind and being one with each other in marriage is so important. So if the budget is something that's really important to your husband, then look at ways to cut costs in your household. If your husband really values homemade meals, focus on that and kind of let go of the cleaning a little bit, or at least keep a few systems in place so that it's generally maintained. If cleaning is super important to your husband, as it is to mine, then that can be top priority, and you can rely either on freezer meals that you pre-made, restaurants, food chains, if you have a network, a community, a church around you that can help. All of those things can be great options. But my point is, whatever is most important to your husband, bringing that to the forefront of your mind not only helps him, but it's also going to help you, because when your marriage is running smoothly, the whole household operates more smoothly. Next, we have what's most important to you, and that's something that you can really go all in on now that you've focused on the other two things, which are self-care and whatever your husband's priorities are. And then you can just put a system in place for the other thing. If you and your husband happen to match up on priorities, even better. I'd actually love to hear what stage of life you're in and what your priorities are versus what your husband's priorities are, where you match, where you differ, things like that. So please start that discussion down below. I would love to hear where you're all at in your homemaking journey. And like I said, there might be one thing out of those 4 categories that's kind of sitting on the back burner waiting for later, and that's completely okay as well, especially if you're a new mom. So here's the final product, and it's not anything fancy. It's not a gourmet meal, but it is nutritious, it tastes good, it's very healthy, it's complete. And you're homemaking, even when you're only focusing on one thing, and maybe especially if you're only focusing on one thing, it can seem more complete, more whole, more of a finished product if you really maximize your efforts in one area of your homemaking. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you next time, and don't forget, God's mercies are new every morning. Bye.
Nice. Okay, so hold it with Mama. Hold it here. Do you like it? Okay, all done. Look at that. Yay! You did it.
Nice.
Now, we're going to wash these, okay?
Nice.